Welcome to You and Your Money. I'm Brian Hurst. This evening we're focusing on the healthcare industry. The National Assembly passed the National Health Insurance Bill on the 13th of June. We all know that it's long overdue and the country needs to fall in line with other countries to provide universal health coverage. The idea of NHI is something many have wanted over all these years. Stakeholders in the private healthcare industry are concerned on what the implications will be. Most concerning is Section 33 that will restrict medical aid schemes to covering only medical care that the NHI does not cover. And joining this evening is my regular guest, Clayton Samsudin. He's Group CEO of Phoenix FSG. Clayton, good to have you on the show.
Thank you for
So Clayton, a lot of noise before, and all of a sudden the bill, the passing of the bill, what does it mean? Where's it going? Where are we in this chain of events?
Yeah, so look, firstly, I think that South Africa and all sort of countries need to provide universal access to their citizens. But I don't think it should come at the price of where those that are able to afford private healthcare are left out of the loop. So, you know, at Phoenix, we're a strong driver of equalizing the playing fields between the have and the have-nots. So we really go out there to try and get those that are not covered onto private healthcare. So you'll probably know that around 16% of the population have access to private healthcare. The others rely on the state. So, you know, I think we all should embrace the fact that there should be access for all citizens to a basic set of benefits. I think where all of us have our queries and our complaints and issues is the manner in which the bill is being introduced. Talking about where we are about 15 years into the development of NHI. We still have a long way to go. Some think that, you know, NHI will be, you know, completed legislatively, you know, by the 2024 elections. But, you know, from a legislative point of view, we have something like no fewer than 11 acts that has to change. And that would include the Medical Schemes Act, the Health Professions Act, the Competitions Act. All of those acts need to be changed. And I don't see us doing this within the next few years in order to fully implement NHI. So it's still a long way away.
I mean, the question everyone's asking, how is NHI going to be funded? Any ideas?
Yeah, so firstly, I just want to make the point that, you know, the percentage that's spent on healthcare in South Africa is sufficient to provide NHI. We don't need to spend any more. What the problem is the wastage and the corruption that's taking place. That is the problem, and that's why I think when you ask where's the funding coming from, it's now additional funding. So you may find a surcharge on pay-as-you-earn, so people will start paying more tax. And I think the biggest negative is that members of a medical scheme will lose the medical scheme fees tax credit. And that's significant. So, you know, a family of 4 could lose up to 1,220 Rand in taxes. Single members around 364 Rand. So those are big numbers. If you,
I mean, let's put that in context. A family of 4, that's a cost to them of 15,000. And that's probably, that's if you're under age of 65.
Correct.
If you're over age 65, and for pensioners, it could be an absolute nightmare because they are getting a certain percentage of everything they spend in terms of their medical aid and out-of-hospital benefits and things that medical aids aren't covering.
Correct.
And that could run into 50, 100,000 Rand, which you would get as a rebate or credit against your actual tax paid.
Correct. So, look, what we're going to see happening is that those that are currently, that could just about afford private healthcare in terms of a medical scheme, if they lose the tax credit, it will put them in a position of where they're unable to afford private healthcare. And I think that is a big disaster. You know, so on the one hand, we're building capacity to provide NHI, and on the other hand, you know, government is doing something that's detrimental to the existing 16% that have access to private healthcare.
Although 16% out of 100% is not a large percentage. So government, the NHI bill is saying we need to equalise healthcare, and yes, there will be that 16% that may lose out. But it's early days.
Sure.
And then will medical schemes and primary healthcare, do you think they'll be allowed to continue, or will they be watered down? So if they're going to be watered down, won't there be a cost saving on medical aid because it's only going to provide certain benefits? I mean, anywhere in the world you've got where countries have a sort of national health system, you still have the right to buy private health care.
Correct. So our model will be exactly the same. So what essentially it would mean is that medical schemes and primary healthcare products will not be able to duplicate the benefit that NHI provides. So let's just use a simple example. If NHI provides emergency transportation or emergency care, then medical schemes can't duplicate that. So I'm using that example specifically because we all know the state of the government's healthcare system and ambulances. So once you start removing that access to emergency care that's provided by private healthcare, then I think, that starts to worry me. Because how quickly are you going to get an ambulance and access to paramedics if you're saying private healthcare cannot provide or duplicate the benefit that NHI has?
So, I mean, look, it's early days.
Yes.
And I would imagine there's a lot of comment now that's coming forward from the public sector, working hand in hand with the government.
Yeah, I'd also say, that it's not going to go away without the fight. So there is going to be, I see this thing getting to the Constitutional Court. I see, the organizations like the Board of Healthcare Funders lobbying against NHI in its current form. I also see certain medical schemes that's going to say, look, you know what, the way that you're trying to position this is unfair. And I think the gripe that most of those lobbying or trying to assist government to implement a fair NHI structure is that whatever they are proposing are not being listened to. So they're saying we want comment, but they're not taking the comment seriously at all.
So let's just talk now. Medical schemes come to the end of June. We're into July now. Soon many of them will be really looking at their benefits and this for 2024, and obviously looking at premium. Are we going to expect increases again?
Yes. So I think we're going to get back to normal now, Brian, where increases will be the 1st of the January of every year. The option changes will be again between October and November. And I think, the guideline has always been CPI plus 3%. So on the one hand, that's always been sort of the suggested manner, but we've seen now for at least 3 years in a row, Council for Medical Schemes is dropping that guideline and sort of suggesting to medical schemes to keep it below 5%. That's not helped because we have seen increases above that. But I think we're going to land up anywhere between 5 and 9, something % for next year.
This may not be a fair question, but with the rand recovering, I mean, what percentage do you think of healthcare is imported?
A huge percentage, because the percentage that's imported is typically the percentage that's the high cost drivers of healthcare. That's not locally produced. So the minute we talk about advancement in technology, new machines, new appliances and so forth, those costs are very, very high. And so that's one of the major cost drivers of the rising cost of healthcare.
So the falling or the recovering rand now at 1750, we were at 1980, that is a plus for medical aids to consider. So they do have to consider a lot to do with currency fluctuations.
Yes, it will be factored in, but then there's another counter factor. And the counter factor is we're coming, of course, out of COVID. So everyone who didn't go for elective procedures are going now. And so that's going to drive up the utilization. And with that happening, I think it's going to counterbalance any kind of saving that there may be. And so I think we're going to get back to some normality of what we can expect with inflationary increases.
Clayton, another question that I'm not sure you can answer is I've seen very little comment from doctors about their comments about NHI, how it's going to affect them, the possibility of many specialists, and we have superb specialists in South Africa, moving on and what the situation. Have you heard anything on the grapevine? Have you heard anything?
So what I have heard is that if they're going to be forced to contract to NHI and accept the NHI rates, so meaning they have to treat people at an NHI tariff, then the talk is we're going to lose even more of these professionals. So you'll find an exodus of professionals. We've seen that already, but I think it's just going to exacerbate. And then what you find is the remaining professionals are going to charge a higher rate to the medical scheme. So, we're already averaging 500–600% above medical scheme rates. And so don't be surprised if we get to 700–800% eventually if that's the case.
But I thought you mean for limits that are not covered by NHI.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely.
just, The balancing of the scale.
Correct.
Well, let's deal with an email from Sandra. She says, she's from Belito. What are the major considerations when one considers changing medical aid options? Can one downgrade during the year? And let me add another rider to that. What should people be doing now in terms of making a decision? Because often the decision is left to the last minute.
Correct.
People haven't been able to evaluate. So what would you be advising people to be doing now in order to decide and to advise, as you would do, what they should be doing for next year?
Yeah, so look, downgrades, certain downgrades and certain plan migrations are allowed, not all of them. So because we have these network options, that depends on whether you can move from one type of network hospital to another. So not all downgrades are allowed, but most of them are. To answer your question, you know, we spoke just before the show, you know, about medical scheme tax credits and what you could claim back. So a good way to look at what was your kind of expenses is to look at what you claimed last year for out-of-hospital benefits, and that must be an indicator for what you need to purchase. If that was your standard claiming pattern, let's say for a few years, and as advisors and brokers, we can get that information from the medical scheme to say this was your day-to-day claims for the year, this is what you claim for chronic, and that should be the basis upon which the analysis takes place to allow you to budget for the following year. So you have to start to optimize your healthcare cover simply because it's become so expensive.
Well, I mean, most people will tell you that their medical aid is one of the biggest line items, the largest line items in any budget expense. And as we've said, an inflation rate of 7 or 8%, medical aid costs are going to, medical aid is going to increase by, in 9 years, going to double.
Correct.
In a further 9 years. So you think of someone who's 45 now, in virtually when he gets to 65, his medical aid is going to be 4 times what it is today. There could be some savings because children may come off, there may be a change.
Yeah.
But now you're in retirement, and your retirement income is fixed, and you're struggling to beat inflation in retirement anyway on your income, on your investments growing, because people can't suddenly stop and say, well, I've got that amount of money, I don't have to worry about inflation, because the two concerns are longevity and inflation.
Correct.
So it's important, the point you're making, evaluate where you are now, and then also start about looking at the wellness programs.
That's right.
How do you avoid having to use a medical aid? So then we talk about the importance of actually doing the homework, and people don't realize medical aid is an enormous expense, and if you don't do the work, so talk to a financial planner, talk to a broker, talk to a medical aid specialist, and let them help you prepare so that when comes increases in 2024, you're in a knowledgeable and you know what you need to buy. Well, we're going to take a break. We're talking healthcare this evening. Stay tuned.